grab my water.
Okay, everybody, we can go ahead and get started. So I'll start off with a short introduction about myself and then a little bit of background of my interest in addiction. And then we'll start with Jacqueline and health department, and we can do little short introductions. There are pamphlets at your table that have longer bios and contact information if you'd like. So my name is Grace, if you don't know me. I'm the vice chair here at TUNE. I also co-lead Psi Chi. My interest in addiction started when I was young. I have some family members who struggle, and I struggled with finding an outlet growing up. And then in high school, I discovered Students Against Destructive Decision, also known as SAD, and I joined that and became the president. And that was kind of my outlet during high school, doing stuff like this. And then didn't do as much at HCC that I would have liked to, but then when I came here to TUNE and I found Kate and Allison, who are amazing, I found my outlet again, and now I'm doing this. Thank you guys so much for coming, everybody. It means a lot.
Hi everyone, I'm Jack Lashford. I work for the Harford County Health Department with our harm reduction unit, and I'm one of their outreach workers.
Hi, I'm Greg Fairley. I'm also Harford County Health Department outreach worker in the harm reduction unit.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Weber. I'm from Towson University. I'm our drug and alcohol health educator in the counseling center and work with Zach in our alcohol, tobacco, and other drug prevention center. We call ourselves ATOD for short.
Good evening. My name is Zach Hitchens. I'm one of the alcohol drug counselors on the main campus of Towson University.
I'm Jessica Didbakowitz, and I'm a family therapist with Ashley.
Hey everyone, my name is Justin Macri. I am a peer recovery specialist with Ashley Addiction Treatments, adolescent unit called the Clubhouse.
Hi, I am Jared Rivas, Cecil County Harm Reduction Supervisor with Boys and Youth. I'm also a person who wants to recovery.
I am Marcus Webster. I am the program advocate for Voice of Recovery.
I'm Austin Bush. I am the Harford County Substance Use Family Support Specialist.
I'm Chelsea Bridges. I am the regional outreach specialist for Harford County.
Elliot Slattery. I am the Senior Business Development Officer for Recovery Centers of America. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. I'm also a person who's lost both of his parents to substance use disorder. And I am the president of Christian nonprofit called Harvest House Ministries, which supports people in getting treatment and things they need in recovery in this area. And yeah, I've been clean almost every
I'm Earl Anderson. I'm a junior student here and an honorary representative of Recovery Centers.
So I'll go ahead and ask the first question, and then we'll just go down the line exactly like this. Is there a difference between an addiction and a dependence?
I believe that there is a difference between an addiction and dependence. I think one of the main things we see is that a lot of people can become dependent on a substance and might not be addicted to that substance. There's also a difference between addiction and substance use disorder, and all three don't necessarily fall in the same category. When I think of dependence, I think of someone who becomes physically dependent on something. A lot of times people think that is someone who's addicted to that substance. A lot of times we see people become dependent on substances that they're taking long term for pain management and other issues that aren't necessarily considered, that would consider themselves like having addiction to that substance. So I think that would be my answer for that.
Try and keep it short. So dependence is something that is a medical diagnosis. Addiction is something that is not. It's a very broad, general word that we use to represent often dependence or what was just mentioned, substance use disorder. It's a term that has a lot of stigma associated to it, and some people don't appreciate it, and at the other time, a lot of people find that term a good way to build community among people who used to or currently still use drugs. As somebody who used to inject drugs, when I first, stopped injecting drugs, is that, yeah. That helped me build a community. Now, I've seen the way that term is often used and weaponized, and especially, when we're talking about substance use, we're talking about something that's criminalized. Even our medical definitions come with a lot of stigma. They're based on a lot of assumptions, ideas that people with substance use disorder can't make their own decisions, are completely dependent and unaware of what they really mean. That's couldn't be farther from the truth or the actual data. I'm trying not to jump around too much, but I would encourage anyone, if you're working in a medical field, to focus on using terms like substance use disorder, dependence on the specific substance we're talking about, and let them describe how they feel about it in a way that fits them.
Nice job. I don't know if I have too much to add. I think you did a great job, and I appreciate kind of the separation in terms of definitions between substance use disorder, dependence. I think these things go hand in hand. I'll just to add something a little bit different. I think we also can think about addiction and dependence, and I believe we're going to get into this, but those terms can apply to things beyond just substance use as well. So I think about dependence, and that word, the first thing that comes to my brain actually isn't substance use. I think about so many other things that we can become dependent on, or that people become dependent on. And while that's a piece of the definition of addiction, I think it applies to a variety of other things as well. Just to
I hate that I have to follow all three of you. I'm sorry that I think I really like your point about how the word addiction is normalized. Because I think that's happened a lot, and because of the negative stigma tied to it. And that's what we're seeing a lot more of, like you said, especially things like substance use disorder, dependence, and what have you. I also think when you think about addiction versus dependence, like you said, people can be dependent on things that they need to function throughout their lives. Versus I think when you think about addiction, I think there's this unmanageability to it, that they can't stop whatever it is they're doing. People say they're addicted to their smartphones. But someone's maybe dependent on smartphones because you need to function throughout life. So I think there's nuanced pieces to it. So I'll leave it short so that I
Yeah, I think we can just reiterate the health department. When you talk about dependence, oftentimes you see withdrawal symptoms, you might see post-acute withdrawal symptoms can last significantly longer than the immediate withdrawal of coming off of a substance. I very agree that the label of addiction is what's closely tied with the stigma. I really think that there's anything else I can add to what you guys already said in terms of that differentiation of dependency is what your body needs in order to survive or feels it does, and addiction is more in terms of that need.
Yeah, I don't really want to butcher it too much either. But at least for me, like in my experience, like the dependence came in two components. It came in a physical component and it came in a mental component, physically and mentally dependent on the substance. And I think Jacqueline made a good point, like you can be dependent on things in a positive realm as well, but like this is like in reference to substance use, so I don't want to butcher it too much, so we'll stick to just strictly substance use.
No. For me, addiction is the obsession and compulsion part of it. And dependence is the same thing everybody else said, like the physical part of my body thinks that I need it, or I need that.
I want to be the first one to skip, because I think everybody has said something that I want to say. You're like the
I'll keep my answer pretty short this week too. I see the difference that Greg actually brought up about addiction and being different just based on the stigma, just based on the term itself.
Okay, so in recovery, my sponsor is pretty big on looking up the definitions of things, right? Especially if you don't know what they mean. So I'm gonna give you guys some of those. Dependence is the state of relying on or being controlled by someone or something, right? So that sounds pretty familiar to me. And I think that in our life we can become dependent on many things, like everyone has said, right? I also think, what's the opposite to me when it comes to dependence? And for me, that word is autonomy, right? Autonomy means I can do this without the support of anything. You know what I mean? I am my own person. I can be whatever it is I choose to be without outside influence, right? And to me, that's kind of like the opposite of a dependence thing, right? And then so we're talking about the idea of like addiction versus the proper terminology these days being substance use disorder, right? And I totally get that. Are we constantly going to run into people matching how they use those words and what they say? I mean, like, especially in the room, you know, like, we call ourselves addicts and alcoholics, you know, like, we do this stuff. So, the outside world might see, like, we're using substance use disorder. You know, if you ask my dad the day before he died of overdose, he'd be like, I'm an addict. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't really care what somebody said about him. And when I first got clean, I would say, I'm a junkie. You know, like, and that was me belittling myself to a degree, right? But over the years, it's like, you know, like, literally, I believe that's what I was at the time, right? So what's the definition of an addiction according to ASAM? Addiction is a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and individual life experiences. People with addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences, right? So I've done that with drugs and alcohol, as well as many other things in my life, right? And slowly over time, do I have to learn to bring autonomy into my life in regard to all these things, right? In order to have well-being and health in my life, so.
I do have something. I definitely feel like dependence and addiction are two separate terms, right? Like dependence can be, medically defined, right? Where addiction, there is no true medical definition for it. For the most part, is rather subjectional, right? You can have an alcoholic and a chocoholic, and they will both say, I'm addicted to this thing, right? There's a spectrum there. Not all addictions are made equal, and it's very subjective to each. Where a dependence really isn't. There's criteria that you have to fulfill to be dependent on something.
Anybody has a question, or I can ask another?
No, I have one. Yeah, it was one, I've never seen something like this one. One of the, I'm not. Don't get this girl on microphone. One of the questions that I thought was pretty neat is, if you have a patient that doesn't want their treatment to be solely focused on their addiction, do you guys have other aspects of treatment that would be beneficial to their daily routine? Come on, girl.
What was the question?
Oops, sorry, hold on. So the question, I was trying to read it. It says, I do not want all of my treatment to be solely focused on my addiction. Are there other aspects of treatment that would be beneficial to my daily routine?
Right, yeah, I think most treatment centers these days, to be honest, are going to be far more than just focusing on the addiction, right? Or like the substance use disorder, or whatever gets you there, right? Like I'm chemically dependent to X, Y, and Z, plus I need detox treatment. I think most people are under the kind of idea that there's some underlying stuff going on. There's a root to this problem, right? So people are going to get, and I can speak for RCA, we're going to get trauma therapy, they're going to get DBT, they're going to get a lot of things that they can use in many other components of their life outside of just like not using, you know? So I think that's probably across the board. So there's so much more to treatment than just like that. That like kind of the medical detox, and then like the being involved in 12-step fellowships and stuff like that are the things that help you out. But a lot of the root stuff is going to happen too. So.
Are we gonna go down the panel for everyone?
You have
Okay,
some-
okay, sorry. Yeah, I agree with Elliot, and like there's different, like I said, I'm a sugar press, so like what we're dealing with is primary mental health, and there's a lot of like mental health and substance crossover in those two things. So like a lot of times, like in order to treat the substance, we need to treat the mental health, but in order to treat the mental health, we need to treat the substance. So there's so much when it comes to, it's treating a whole person. Like I would say that like recovery treatment facilities and everything, they really do focus on a holistic approach in treating the whole person, because we know that, you know, like if you know, you spend 6 hours a day in the group focusing on addiction, like you wouldn't be treating underlying causes and conditions. And that's what we talk about in recovery, that the alcohol and the drugs are but a symptom. That's, you know, what brings you in the door, like obviously needs to be treated, but that's just a symptom of what's really going on underneath. And we really need to get to those underlying causes and conditions in order to make progress and to have long-term recovery.
So at Voices Hope, we're a little bit different. So we're a community-based organization. One of the things that we notice is that, and I like to share this. Has anybody familiar with the trauma tree? You guys ever heard this? Oh, perfect. I get to teach you guys something. So the way I look at trauma is like a tree, right? The roots of a lot of our trauma, those underlying things that then, you know, if I lash out or I get angry at Austin, that's a symptom of my trauma deeply rooted, right? So maybe let's say my parents were divorced, right? That's the root cause of my trauma. And the tree to that and the leaves that you would see on the branches, or maybe I struggle to keep relationships. Maybe I depend on a substance. Maybe I'm have manipulative behavior because I'm used to having, you know, two different parents. So oftentimes those symptoms of that trauma manifest in different ways. One of the cool things that we do when we work with individuals is we try to get to the root of that trauma. We actually recently brought on a trauma specialist to help people with underlying trauma needs. If they need housing support, we provide housing support. We want to eliminate any and all barriers that are going to keep people from progressing on their recovery pathway. And another thing that's unique is we have a menu approach to recovery. So however you determine your recovery wants to look like, we're going to ensure that it looks like that's to the best of your ability. If you're an IV drug user and you decide that you want to go through our MAT program and then maybe perhaps get your medical marijuana card and have that as your pathway, you can have it. If you want to be a 12-step or strictly abstinence, you can have it. So really just designing recovery the way people want to do it, but throughout the whole process identifying what are those root causes that keep us from getting and continuing on that recovery pathway.
Yeah, so I could just give you like my short experience is I didn't know how to be a clean. I was just I was living kind of animalistically, but I had been clean before, so I had stopped doing drugs before and continued to use. I could get a year, 2 years, 3 years even clean and continue to use because I didn't address those other things. So today I've been able to maintain active recovery because I changed everything.
Yeah, and it was the same for me. I was a 24-year-old adult child. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I was still caught up on my parents, loving enablers. But like I needed to learn those life skills. And when I went through treatment, like I got therapeutic services for the substance use and the mental health issues that were going on, but they also provided other support groups for resources, spiritual advisors, exercise. I learned how to like take care of my body a little bit. I was introduced to a nutritionist. Like I didn't know any of that stuff, and they were able to provide some of that stuff, life skills, whether it be like vocation or cooking or X, Y, and Z. Like those are like some of the things that got me on my journey. If that makes sense.
Can you guys hear me if I don't use the mic? Am I loud enough? Perfect. So in my work as a family therapist, I really don't think I've ever met someone with only struggling with substance use disorder, right? They might have genetic components, of course, but it's life events, it's trauma, it's comorbid mental health diagnoses, it's all kinds of other stuff. And so if you're only treating one thing without treating all of the things, you're really only treating a symptom and not the whole disease and disorder and all the things that are going on. So, and actually we have a number of different things. They do individual, they do group therapy, they have special groups for men seeking safety, women seeking safety, there's depression groups, feel free to pipe up because I might forget some of them. There's anxiety groups, depression groups, all kinds of different things that they can opt into in addition to. There's a family service component because addiction doesn't just impact the person's addicted, it impacts the family system. And so the family has to heal. And families can develop all kinds of unhealthy behaviors in response to loving someone through an addiction. And so it is a way to heal the whole family system. So I think if we're only looking at the substance use disorder and not looking at all of those other components and giving them resources for that, then we're robbing them of true recovery, of really being able to get long-term and successful for years to come. That's my shit.
So, I dream of the day that a client comes in my office and there's nothing wrong with them. Like if I had to sit in front of my office, I was like, I just have a problem with alcohol. I think this is gonna be great. I've been working with college campuses for 11 years. I've been recovered for 16 years. I've never met anyone that just has one thing going on. And like you said, just to treat one thing without treating everything else, it's not going to benefit the person long term. Because all those other things are addressed. Now that may be the thing that gets them in the door. I'll ask because it's going to mandate from seeking. And whatever that issue in their lives happening is going to get them in the door. But all because of the company for that doesn't mean I'm going to treat that. Because that'll be negligent on my part as a healthcare provider to only do one thing. It's like if someone's in a car accident, you know, oh, are you only going to fix the broken leg? We're only going to stitch them up, we're not going to set them up. Like, we really need to make sure we're treating everything. And I think the field's really moving in that direction of holistic treatment. To learn we're needing people connect with nutritionists and things like that. Because we need to support people holistically. That's why I don't have it memorized by heart, because Samson's definition of recovery has nothing to do with substance use. It has everything to do with leading directed life of holistic wellness. And that's really what we want for people when they're seeking treatment, is to have that self-regulated holistic wellness.
Yeah, something I'll just add that is not in the treatment realm, because I work in prevention. So I don't do any of the treatment stuff. I'm solely focused on prevention on our campus. And something that we do is we have a foundation of wellness. So what that means is anything we do, we function from the 8 dimensions of wellness, which I'm sure all of you have at least heard of, I hope. So what that means is when we talk about substance use with our students, we're talking about substance use related to all of these 8 dimensions, because substance use doesn't occur in a vacuum, right? So how is your substance use impacting your academics? How is it impacting your financial wellness, your emotional, your spiritual? And we talk about it in all of these areas to show students how all of these things are interrelated, interconnected, and also affect one another. So even if the student I'm talking to doesn't have an issue with their substance use, it still is really important to draw connections and draw attention to how the choices you make impact all of these areas of your well-being, and how it's important to make sure you're paying attention to all of those things so you can be well, whatever that definition means for you.
So if I was working with somebody who came to me and they said that, I would ask them, it sounds, I wouldn't say it sounds like, but I'd ask, well, is substance use treatment what you want? And it sounds like the answer might be no. And quite frankly, then I shouldn't be doing that. That's coercive, that's not necessarily the appropriate thing. I shouldn't send somebody to treatment when that's not what they're interested in, if that's not what they want. That's, only gonna push them away from the care system. That's gonna push them out because they're not getting the care that they are asking for. I'm a big proponent of housing first, because that's what happened to me. I got housed and then I was able to take steps forward. So maybe they want custody treatment, maybe they want testing, maybe they want safe supply, maybe they just need to, maybe they want a place to stay, they need food. That's what I need to find out. And that's what I need to address first, what this person actually needs. You'll hear about motivational interviewing a lot, And, we can talk about, I love the 1 to 10 scale, out of 1 out of 10, how much are you interested in treatment? Which really I wouldn't say this because I don't work in treatment, but they might say, 3, I'd be like, well, why aren't you a 2? And I can put that in the back of cessation, which is funny because I know. But it was the best time I interviewed, the best motivational interviewing training I ever got. But the point is, one of the big issues in this industry is people being sent to substance use treatment. That's not the appropriate place to send them at this moment. Somewhere they're going to get the care they need. Sometimes the best thing we can do is send them down to the local SSB, because then it's going to reduce their chance of getting HIV, Hep C. We might learn more about proper ways to inject, wound care, things like that. That is like the big but I'm not going to. I'm going to use a debt.
I'm going to pass just because I think everyone pretty much covered exactly the type of things that I was talking about.
Anybody else have questions?
No, I'm gonna ask no one. Unless someone else talks. Sorry, I saw one in
So this is just like, I'm a little curious. Do you ever see, you talk about how you see, like on other things, multiple addictions. Do you ever see something like gambling addiction or addiction along with this?
So is your question, do we often see a lot of comorbidity, like addiction-wise, like as in someone having one addiction along with another one? Was your question that do we often see people having like multiple addictions when they come in seeking help, I guess? Is that what the gist of the question?
I'm guessing that's a little harder to ask for you guys, because I know you guys respond to overdoses and stuff.
No, I can totally, 1,000,000% of the time. That's obviously not true, but I don't know, that's probably true. I would say, yeah, like 100% of the time. I don't use drugs anymore, but I collect sneakers. I do lots of other things that are like horribly addictive, but just like less so. I would say that there's a lot of people who react on their addictions like quite differently. You will see a lot of comorbidity with people who have addictions with alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, and not all of these things will be at the same time. A lot of times what happens is you give up one and you pick up another. So I know that for a lot of the people ahead of me are going to talk who work in active treatment centers, they will tell you that a lot of times some of their clients will leave with one addiction and come back with another. It's just commonplace in that the same centers of our brain that react with one addiction can react with another. So yeah, I mean, it is something that you see like quite often, not just with me and most people on this panel, but with like a lot of the clients that we work with for sure.
So yes, but I think we have to be careful. And with that, once again, you'll probably hear me say too many times, we're talking about something that's criminalized, something that's criminalized, which cuts off avenues for people to survive. And people also use drugs for many reasons, some being fun, some like, I smoked a lot of rock so I could stay awake when I was on the street and I wouldn't get harmed. It helped me. So, I had some habits, I learned ways to survive, if, going back to the treatment thing, if every time I go to social support, they try to send me to treatment, and what I want is a place to stay, well, I'm gonna lie to you, because that's how our system works. To get what I need is I have to lie. Unfortunately, and then people come in and you get upset with them for lying. We all automatically assume that the way they may be surviving, getting by, might be another form of dependence, when really that's what their options are. And if that's what you've known for years, that's what you do. And so it's really a process of getting people, to explore other options. Once again, the motivational interviewing, making sure people have the appropriate places to learn skills, get what they need, so that I can find other lines of work, things like that. So yes, very much so, trauma affects us in different ways. But also, a lot of these things are survival techniques.
I'm gonna skip.
So I really like what you said, because I think there's an assumption when someone goes to treatment, the idea is we're just going to take whatever they're doing and take it away from them. And that's what we're looking to do holistically, because I think about people that work with, where there's substance use, yes, it's problematic, things like that. But if that's their only way of coping right in that moment, I'm not going to push them to do something that they don't want to do or aren't ready to do yet. because if I take out under them, they're going to decompose in different ways, or it's going to jump to some other automatic behavior. But we also see people using substances as well as other like process addictions, gambling, and things like that. Because I mean, like, just think about it. If you're gambling, you get free drinks. So it's kind of instead you keep gambling, so you keep drinking for free. It's a wonderful system how that works, right? So we do see a lot of that, and we're also seeing it manifest in different ways that people don't realize. So I think sometimes, like for gambling, for example, we have this thought of like, oh, it's only betting on like racetracks, things like that. I work with college campuses. I can tell you that students lose a ton of money in fantasy sports, but people don't realize it because they're just on their phone. So it's not that you have to go somewhere to gamble to do some of these behaviors. It's just, you know, it's their commonplace, or it's a commonplace looking activity, but it becomes something that they didn't realize. It's starting to negatively affect their lives in a lot of different ways. But it's really that balance, like what you were talking about, is what does the person need in this moment? How can we best support them? Yes, we want to be able to treat them holistically and everything that we can. Let's figure out maybe which one of these behaviors are they most concerned with right now that I can't deal with the gambling until I stop doing it. Then we can also work on what's that underlying thing that's driving all of this, so once they're in recovery, they're not jumping from addiction to addiction to addiction.
So yeah, we see, you guys can hear me, right? I hate this mic. Okay, so we see a lot of it, right? There's, you have the process addictions. It's not going to be the primary reason for coming into treatment. I don't see people that are just coming in for gambling or sex addiction or something like that, but they might have them intertwined. The best way I can describe it is people who have substance use disorders or other addictions get this better than expected surge of dopamine in the pleasure center of your brain, it's your survival center of your brain. You feel like you need it in order to survive. That's communicating to the executive function skills, positive decision making, impulse control. So anything that's going to cause that surge is going to potentially trigger that dopamine. Oh, that feels good, but you know what would feel different, right? So yes, we see it. It manifests in lots of different ways. You're not going to get treatment. You're not going to get funding for treatment for just gambling or things like that. But oftentimes there's other things like substance use, to drugs, alcohol, whatever, when they're coming into treatment.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, I looked up a list. There are like different types of 12-step programs, not just for drugs and alcohol. There's Overeating Anonymous, there's Gamblers Anonymous, Love Addicts Anonymous. I don't have the list in front of me, but I found this really good one, and one that stood out is like Nurses with Trauma Anonymous, which is just like support groups for individuals to go get the help they need, kind of like what Greg was saying, in the moment. So gambling is like your primary thing. If that's what you're struggling with, there are resources for that, and there's a plethora of other 12-step.
Codependency Anonymous is really good for families.
Yep. I'm sure there's families anonymous.
There is. There is one.
My addiction just manifests itself now in food and caffeine. So I just like rotate back and forth.
So I think gambling is one of those weird things. I'm one of those weirdos who actually has an DSM sitting on his desk at home. But gambling is like one of those weird things that, like, you know, it's a substance use disorder. It's defined in the DSM and under substance use disorders, but it's often forgotten. I think, you know, we think of addiction, we think of substance use as opiates, as alcohol, as these kind of like mainline, I guess, stereotypical addictions. But gambling is one of those ones that's oddly normalized. And, you know, kind of touching on that, you know, on the cell phone thing, you know, when sports betting became legal in Pennsylvania, I would sit there at work and I'm like, oh, I can place this bet, I can place this bet, I can place this bet. And it's one of those weird things of like, there is some positive to it. If you get that one good hit and you win $500, you're willing to do that again. But then that weird rabbit hole comes when you take that $500 worth of winnings, you're like, I'm gonna divvy it out into different things, and then you're left with nothing. So it's quite odd, and I think in regards to comorbidities, I don't think I can put my hand to that, but I appreciate that again.
I'm probably gonna put the mic down here, that's what we all. Not too much to piggyback off of, from the, I guess we're working with the family perspective, that is something that we do, or something I personally work with a lot of families on, is keeping an eye out for those additional addiction devices coming into play when someone's in recovery. We do see people going from one to another, whether it's shopping, whether it's gambling, even something simple, just buying scratch offs every single day, while even in something in a recovery house, we see it. I think just knowledge is key there. Moving that whole up, feedback over.
I'll just share like my experience from early recovery until now is I had a lot of comorbidity with stuff. And like when you took the drugs and alcohol away from me, and everyone kind of co-signed everything else I was addicted to, because nobody wanted to talk about the other things that were a problem, you know, because we all were engaging in similar activities and no one wanted to address it, and therefore we ignored it with each other, you know. And it took a long time for some of those things to get great enough for me to actually take a look at it, right? Because it's not the same as when you're using substances, right? Where like you then need to do something about it or you'll die, or you overdose and end up in the hospital or whatever. But there are things that like continue to trigger shame responses in myself, and guilt and fear and anxiety and stuff like that. And therefore for a long time, like I was running around with like untreated anxiety, depression, all this stuff in relation to my relationship with comorbid behaviors that like I didn't think I needed to change because everybody else was doing exactly what I did, right? And also say a big issue with that for me too is like I got sober on a scholarship to a state rehab facility, left, I didn't have any funding, like stuff's available now to actually get support, to learn that I even had these things, or that these things existed, or that there were traumas in my life that would cause me to perpetuate some of this stuff, you know? And it wasn't until I got a job that had like cocaine insurance and all this stuff that I was even encouraged to go take a look at some of these things, you know? So like, my hope is that the people out here who do my job are actually running around in the communities being useful to everyone, right? Because that's what it takes around here, to make sure people are actually getting proper care and don't run around with like extreme anxiety disorder, things like that, like I was for so long. And that's another reason why I'm so passionate about this stuff. So that's what I'll say.
Excuse me. I'm like strangely qualified to write a paper about this. I've been reading research article after research article on comorbidity addictions. Of like how often does someone have a substance use disorder and a behavioral addiction or a process addiction, and it's fairly high, right? Because we can wrap up what we talked about in the previous questions, which is one, the idea of addiction or the definition of addiction is kind of hazy. You know, again, someone can absolutely say, "Oh, I'm addicted to alcohol," but they might not be able to recognize that with their shopping. Two, addressing it holistically, like further up the line, the pleasure centers in the brain are constantly triggered, you know, whether we want to or not, right? We get so accustomed to that response that once you take away the biggest feeder of that, you're gonna find someone else to do it. And it's like, you know, you have to address it holistically, all of it at the same time. And just something that comes up in these articles again and again and again is some treatment centers allow you just to continue to smoke cigarettes through the entire stay. And it's like, you know, that's just something else that's going to be pumping those pleasure centers. So it's tricky. But all in all, yeah, there is a lot of comorbidity.
Don't you take away.
Yeah, don't touch, no, don't touch the nicotine. That's not.
Alright, so what are some things that can cause college students to turn to substances? And what advice do you have for your peers to be able to acknowledge those symptoms and signs of rejection?
As a current college student, just like general stress and decompressing, where you can go out one good night and then tell yourself, yeah, I won't do that again. You know, I want another good night out, another good night out, another good night out. And I feel like we live, especially with college students, where it's like, it's not promoted like rat out or be like, hey, that is going way too far, like I'm worried about you. But I just think just staying vigilant, keeping an eye on those chain good nights in a row, and just, you know, calling out when you see it. That's all I really have to say.
Yeah, I think like maybe some answers you're looking for might be stuff like peer peer pressure and things of that nature. Which I think we're all influenced by whatever culture we subscribe to, right? Like, I was in a punk rock band when I was a kid, and like was on like tours every once in a while, and like that's how I started drinking a lot. But a lot of the people I played with didn't get addicted to alcohol. You know what I mean? Like, they just drank sometimes or drank after they played. I got drunk before I played, after I played, and then woke up somewhere that I didn't know where I was, you know? And but also too, as somebody who went to college in sobriety, I can say that college and the stress of like college and completing papers and getting good grades and doing stuff like that and deadlines and things triggered more of the trauma stuff within me than anything in my whole entire recovery did. I think I went crazier doing college and recovery than I had doing anything else I've ever done in recovery, you know? Maybe outside like the loss of my dad in recovery was like the second biggest mentally triggering thing I've experienced. I think not a lot of people understand what that pressure is like, you know? So I think that's probably one of the biggest things. And I think we're told, no, you go to college, you do this, you finish this, that's how you get to the next place. But the same people yelling that stuff are completely unaware of how college these days like really affects you. So.
I can really only talk about my experience, and you know, I was drinking alcoholically by the time I got to college, but the ease of access absolutely just, ramped up, and I will say that like kind of like what Elliot said, like there were my girlfriends, like there were people that drank just like I did, and they are not currently in recovery. They're doing just fine. Like the issue was the parties, like everyone grew up and like went on with their lives, and I didn't. And I can tell you, like my friends, like absolutely reached out, like and were concerned about my drinking and brought this to my attention, and like I was not kind, like I was in my addiction, and you know I just found friends. So I'm not like professionally qualified to talk about this, but like I can talk about like my roommates, like my drinking was absolutely out of control in college, and like when people tried to approach me, like I just didn't listen, and like what people did was my advice, what they did, and what looking back was the safest thing for them to do was to put distance between themselves, because at some point, like I'm not their responsibility. Not to say like let them die or whatever, but like, and I think that there's so many like I think Towson's really good because you have resources like Zach, like Jack, like there's places to go on these college campuses where you can bring your concerns, you can talk about it, you can take it to the professionals, because like my roommates were 18, 19, 20, you know, however, they're not qualified to do anything, and it's not their job, and like there's so many, and I think it's just really important to take advantage of the resources that are available, and leave it to the professionals, and like voice your opinion and say like, hey, like your behavior's scaring me or whatever, but like also like not take it upon yourself to try to save anybody, because like, for me, like, it was, I needed to want to get help before I got sober, and there's nothing anyone could have said or done to really influence me in any way until I was ready.
So faculty-wise, you have immense amount, especially now, college students, especially now, have enormous student debt. You know, you have 18, 19-year-old kids being given $20,000, and that's on a very small scale of things. You have pressure from schoolwork in general. Then you have college culture. You know, I know I'm 10, 12 years removed from that, but still, you know, I went to Towson parties, I went to UNB parties, I went to college park parties. I mean, that's just what you did. And then you have family factors. And then you have kids who are just, you have people who are kids who are essentially getting their first independence. You know, they're out of their parents' sight. You do have the peer pressure factors. There are enormous amount of factors that go into it. In terms of advice, while not taking on an active caregiver role, because that just adds to the stress, don't be afraid to check your friends. Don't be afraid to check in on your friends. Practice harm reduction as much as possible. Know what suppliers are out there, because there are such things as safe suppliers and unsafe suppliers. Having access to fentanyl testers, because let's be honest, cocaine culture, coke culture, all goes along with bar scene, all goes along with party culture. That's what we see a lot of. having access to Narcan, not being afraid to have uncomfortable conversations.
So I ended up going away when I graduated from Aberdeen in 2011. Went to a place called Allegheny College up in Northwest PA. And I made, I always tell people now when they're kids I work with that like I want to go to college, I always say, when you go away to college, you're really paying for that college experience because there's a lot that kind of gets thrown in there of like what to expect, right? Typically young men, especially us coming from an athletic background, probably want to join a fraternity. Typically it's that association of getting some sort of family atmosphere. A lot of individuals that were in my fraternity did not have that, which is what attracted them to that. With that and that away college mentality usually comes a little bit of money. That leads to, rampant drug use, marijuana use, cocaine use. When you have an academic workload, you're probably crushing up a few Adderall to keep you up over the night. We used to joke all the time, we'd show up for exams the next day and people would have glue running out of their nose. It's the reality of it. And it's just a weird thing. And with that fraternity culture too, it's glorified in a sense. A lot, kind of moving forward, we're trying to get rid of a lot of that toxic masculine stigma that's associated with it. But, frat guys and boys between the ages of 18 and 25, I say the frontal lobe wants you to kill yourself because it's not fully developed. You're going to take every drug you possibly can. You're going to jump off the roof of a building through the table because it looks cool. You're going to do Bam Margera, Johnny Knoxville kind of stuff, and that really carries it. It really carries its way. But it's not until you get out of it and you watch friends that are drinking a bottle of New Amsterdam every day until they have 15 of them that they can put string lights through to hang up as decor, or have beer cans and all the beer bottles that they've drunk on their mantle. Like that's actually artwork or whatever it would be. It's not. So it's just that weird reinforcement of what we expect with college life, the pressures as has been referenced, the drug use that comes along that pressure of feeling low. But I guess advice is really just being present, acknowledging the stress, the trauma that people experience, offer to pull them out of that. You guys are blessed in this day and age to have the resources you guys have on your campus. That was not a thing when I was there. If you had an addiction, you just disappeared one semester and never came back. So that's my input on that.
For me, I went to tiny community college in New Jersey. So, but for everyday life, advice would be, like for me, I'm building a life that I don't have to use or drinking. I'm okay with me, and it literally all started with being okay with me.
Yeah, I'm an HECU student as well, and this isn't Arizona State College, but like from being a person in recovery, I can see it a little bit more of like the culture is still there and present, and I agree with everything that Mark had said. And my only advice would be to find like a positive outlet. And I know drinking and drugging is the most accessible and it's the most promoted in this culture, but the societies that you guys have and the clubs that you guys have, take advantage of some of that stuff and check on your friends for sure. And I agree with that one.
I don't have much more to add. I mean, definitely is a negative coping strategy to deal with stress, pressure, all the things. Recreational use, college students, it's the norm. I hear so many families describe, well, we met in college and we drank together and it's what everybody did and it was normalized. And binge drinking was more acceptable than talking about the difficulties that people were carrying. So just be really aware of that. Not frustrating, but don't have to. There's so much of that in terms of you show up somewhere which is expected versus just being able to be present and surprising. So it can very much be part of the culture of college. Just it's a stressor.
So when you first heard the question about people use substances in college, it's life. It's stressful. And it can be anything that leads to substances, I think, especially with college. There's also this social cultural narrative of this is the best way to do and this is what students do. And if you don't do that, does that mean you're doing college wrong? And I hear that a lot from students who are in recovery, so it's a recovery program. And I felt that when I was in college recovery, I'm like, well, I'm not doing all these things that I really college society says this is what I'm supposed to do. And that pressure that people experience, it's not like after school special, I would have to be in someone's like, hey kid, you want drugs? Like, that really happened. Never happened to me, but who knows?
students is that it's a way into an instant friend group. They allow our students to use marijuana on campus. A lot of times, well, this is the easiest way for me to make friends. Is that I know if I say I smoke, I'm immediately gonna have this little tribe of people that I can smoke with. And so I think there's like little ways that kind of people sneak into substance use, and for some people it doesn't cost anything. As far as helping friends, being honest with them, one thing I found, I did fraternity risk management for 6 years, which is a little stressful job, do fraternity risk management. It's like herding cats that are trying to kill themselves. The best metaphor for it. But what I always talk to students and tell them is that sometimes the easiest way to talk about someone's substance use is to talk about the stuff they do while they're under the influence of substances. Because a lot of times we talk about like substance use is stigmatized. And when people are addressing someone's substance use, those defenses tend to go up right away. So going to someone and say like, hey, what about your drinking? Sometimes that puts the defenses up right away. But go to that person and say, it really pisses me off when you put your head through the wall. And that person can think about those behaviors and what can lead to those behaviors. And maybe for them it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't, drink as much because I can put my head through the wall and do those things. There's a fun correlation there sometimes. But sometimes that's the kind of like the side door that makes them open to having a discussion about changing behaviors in other ways. So sometimes that can be a really helpful avenue for students. And also, if they're concerned about their friends' substance use and their friends that are receptive to it, use the resources on campus to one, talk about how you have these conversations, but also make sure that person's gained support for themselves and is concerned about their friend. Because that adds to the stress they're experiencing. Because even if they do distance themselves, there's still that little voice in the back of their head, oh, I hope that person's okay. Where they see that person out and about on campus and I wonder how that person's doing. With social media, we can see these people and learn from things like that a lot more. So making sure they're reading help for themselves as well. So when that person's ready to have that conversation, they can still be there for them, but they are supporting them as well.
Yeah. I echo everything that everybody said. I've been trying to wrap my brain to think of something different and I'm struggling. Something that comes to mind that I think about another motivation or another reason. Yes, the cultural piece, but also environmental factors. So I think about like just like bar deals that encourage binge drinking. Like we have 25-cent beer night on Thursdays in Towson, and like that is something that's literally driving students to binge drink. When I went to college for a friend undergrad and we had rails on Wednesday night, which was $1.25 drink. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's still cheap. So there's lots of environmental factors that also encourage it in our society as well. So that's something else I think about, just that message that's sent to students when that's right down the street from them. Like, what does that tell you about what's okay and what's not okay? So that's something different. And just to piggyback off of what Zach said, something that I hear every single time I talk to students, and I run our sanction group for students that get in trouble, is, well, I'm just a social user. I'm just a social drinker. I only use cannabis with friends. And like, it all comes kind of back to that peer group, and maybe they're lying to me, maybe they're not, right? But I always hear that, well, I'm only doing it with blank. So isn't that okay? And there's so much of that peer influence. But everything everybody said is so accurate and right. Another piece of advice that I just want to like also echo is something you said, which is like being okay with having people in your life that don't use and supporting people who don't use and not shitting on them for that decision. I have a lot of students who work with me that don't use substances, and they constantly tell me when they go out with friends how like awful it feels when they get made fun of for not using. That sucks, and that should not be an experience that somebody has. They should be empowered to do whatever the hell they want to do with their body, just like we all should be okay with the choices that we make, or feel empowered to make our own choices. So that's something that comes to mind. And if you are worried about a friend, everything everybody said, and also reminding yourself you are nobody's therapist, and you don't need to be anybody's therapist, unless you are a therapist, and then you're your client's therapist. But you're not your client's therapist, right? Like it is not your job to, get somebody to do things. You can like, take the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink, right? Like that's something that I always tell my students as well. And remembering it's not kind of all on you, and it's not all of your job. And you can also go to people to help figure out how to navigate this conversation. So a few people here have mentioned they have resources for if you're worried about your friends, your mom, your roommate, fill in the blank. Go to somebody to talk to them like a professional about how to have that conversation first. Can be super powerful and really helpful. Substance use counselors are not just there to help the person who is struggling with their substance use, they're also there to help the family member, the friend, the peer that is worried about their friend or concerned or doesn't know how to navigate that situation. So, yeah.
It's fun. That's why people get high in college. Like, and that's perfectly okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. In the eyes of criminal justice system, there might be, but that's okay. Like, just because your friend's going out and getting high does not mean that you're gonna end up on this stage in 10 years, like me. Like, and some might. That's important to know. That's because that's part of stigmatizing drug use. This idea that drugs are bad, that using drugs is bad, that using, a lot of people in college use different substances because they're performance enhancing. It might only be a short-term solution. It might be the solution they have right now. Okay. We have to stop demonizing that because that is not helping them in the long run. So yeah. And then now, if you're concerned about your friend, sometimes it's mind your own business. Stop judging them. A lot of times, what I would tell somebody if they came to me, I'd say, figure out what your boundaries are. This has already been talked about, not being a therapist, not bad. If you don't want to be around somebody who, is acting in certain ways and using substances, you don't have to be. And you can let them know that. Like, be honest with them, like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, I'm not going to be around it. But don't shy through those conversations. Have honest conversations with them. So if they find themselves in a place where their use becomes chaotic, where it is causing them other issues, then they feel more comfortable coming to talk to you. Great example, a friend of mine I played board games with, likes to do a lot of coke. I always made sure he had fentanyl test strips. He came to me the other week and asked me to help him navigate in the treatment and he said, because it's nothing special I did, I'm not some magic genius or anything, it's because I never sat there and was like, I never tried to do an intervention, I never did anything like that. I just said, hey, you might want to take a break, it seems like you're looking real tired, and things like that. I never tried to demonize what he was doing. I just made sure that there was a place and somebody he knew who cared and was open about it when he was ready for something.
Thanks, Greg. I'm going to try and walk this tightrope of drug use at school, and drug uses can be very bad. My experience is going to be different than a lot of people's experience. I went to college in Maryland from 2006 to 2010, and if anyone got sober around that time or knows anything about drug use at that time, then you probably had experience with opioids at that time. I was introduced to them. Well, I should start off by saying that I went to college with a great support system. I went to college already having seen a therapist for past trauma, stuff like that. I was set up for success. What ended up happening is a lot of my outlets like therapy, like sports, these kinds of things got taken away when I got injured. This was at a time when you got injured, you got prescribed large doses of opiates. I don't have to explain the rest. My lacrosse coach used to say the best ability is availability, and opiates were incredibly available. They were not hard to get, and so I ran with it. What I found when I took opiates was that I didn't need any of my other support systems anymore because that took care of all of them. I didn't need to see a therapist because I was happy all the time. I didn't need to play lacrosse because I was happy all the time. I didn't need to do any of these things because it did for me what I was sort of looking for in all those other things. It wasn't until later that I realized that I was basically just using that as a crutch in order to not cope with past traumas, which come up years later. Yes, there is a part of me, and I'm very supportive of drug users and their rights, and I'm not someone who would ever tell someone to stop using drugs, but at the same time, I'm someone who tries to offer as many services as I can. Like Greg was talking about, if someone requests services from me, I try to point them in the right direction. Just because I know that there's a lot of stressful things for college students these days. While there might not be as available amount of drugs as there was back when I was in college, I do know that stress is probably twice as bad because of social media and a lot of other factors. So it's probably for the best. And I would just, the best advice I could absolutely give someone that's in college is to use the resources that are available to you, because I can tell you that if I used those resources when I was in college, the resources that are sitting right here, that I would have had a much easier path than the one I gave myself. So I would just say use resources as advice.
Anybody have any questions?
First off, like, no one's always anything, so hats off to all of you all who are where you're at after going through what you're going through. It's not easy. I lost someone to addiction 10 years ago, so when I came across this question, it's brilliant. So the question states, how can someone tell if their loved one or friends need help if they're able to hide it so long as we have no idea?
Ruth, this is a tough one, but it's an important one.
Sorry.
Yeah. Does anybody have? I would say, yeah.
Sorry.
So I think the really tough thing with addiction, and that people with substance use issues in general, they have a superpower that they can hide things really well. I often joke that if I need a financial planner, I want someone who used to be a drug dealer. To be honest with you, because they managed a small, very profitable business at a young age for the most part. Some of the most successful students I've ever worked at Taos University, like the students that are doing ridiculous things for their lives now, used to deal drugs and guns. And they did it at a young age, so of course they majored in business when they got to college, and now they're doing great. But I think with substance use, because of the shame, the stigma, it's criminalized, people end up having to develop these strategies to hide it as best they can. And I think even though people can hide it, sometimes we can notice small changes in people that just seem a little bit out of the ordinary. And sometimes we get this gut feeling that something's just off about this encounter, whatever it is. And we can see those kind of happen over and over again. And sometimes it's a look someone gives us. Sometimes it's people are more quiet and saying what they used to be. These little changes that, something's easy to brush off, maybe retire, they have a day, something like that. But we start to see these subtle changes, and sometimes that's the only clue that we get. Sometimes we see large behavioral changes, and it's like, okay, it's kind of like a red flag. I always cringe when I hear that they a parent or you'd be like, your student or your child's attaining a rough looking crowd. Like, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe that's how those kids like to dress. Good for them. But so I think it's those nuanced things that we have to look for. What's also that gut instinct, and part of it too, I think, is having an open dialogue before someone develops an issue with substances, and letting people know. Just like your awesome example of I'm someone that cares about you. Just letting people know that you care. Sometimes you don't have to judge them or belittle them, things like that. Sometimes when they have that one moment of clarity, they can say, this is someone I can go to. This is someone that I know that will want to help me. And, because we do have a lot of societal stigmas and things like that. And with substance use, it's this fun thing of but a lot of times people talk about it negatively, like it's this, it's the devil. Or we don't talk about it at all. Because maybe that's our family history, there's been a lot of substance use in our family. So no one talked about Grandma Susie. We don't talk about her. You never met Uncle Jeff for a reason, but we never hear about that. So it sends that message of those people are cast out. So if I come to this, am I going to be cast out? Or it's so demonized that you have this terrible person for doing this, and I can't, bring this forward. So sometimes it's like you said, that tightrope of balancing, I'm open to talking about this. This is how you can say, this is how I feel about it. This is my values related to it. But if you want to talk about it, whatever's going to do, so I guess that's my answer.
I think you make a lot of great points. The little things, the subtleties, you feel it in your gut that something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. It looks like mental health. We can explain it by mental health, but there's something not quite right. They're maybe sleeping too much, there's so many one-offs, they can get really skilled at hiding what's going on. I think we think of people that are using in social situations and things like that, and maybe they're staying at the party a lot later than others, but it doesn't always look like that. It can look like isolation, it can look like avoidance, it can look like withdrawing from social situations, it can look like making tons of excuses to leave the party so they can get back home so they can hide what they're doing because they need to get the next fix. So it doesn't always manifest in the after school sort of things that you see, like this is problematic behavior. It can be a lot of other things. And so if you're feeling something off, not being afraid to, not accuse, not demonize, not weaponize, just, hey, I'm noticing and I'm concerned. How can I best support you? What's going on? Can we talk about it? Or when you're ready to talk about it, let me know. Or if not with me, then can you find someone that you feel safe enough to talk about with what's going on? Because I can tell you're just not where you need to be right now and something's going on with you.
I think I want to pass. There was a couple things and now I forget them. That like addiction, from my experience, comes in all different shapes and sizes. And as selfish as it sounds sometimes, not. You just don't know. You just don't know what you don't know. And so just education and like doing things like this and education and open communication.
I'd say definitely a few years ago, I took a key indicator would be if somebody's always asking for $40, right? It's like, what do you need $40 for? I gotta get my prescription. But it's a lot more complicated, and I'm definitely gonna piggyback off of our Ashley colleagues. And one thing I want to add is this iceberg effect. So there's what you see, there's those symptoms of avoidance, withdrawal, but there's so much more hidden below the surface. And I think, and just carrying through the whole conversation, when you're connecting people to that support system, when we're actually having open and transparent dialogues as friends, family members, and loved ones, that conversation can be had. Now, there's obviously still going to be stigma. And I think one of the weird things, and Austin might pick up on this too, is a lot of times as family members, we either become the enablers or we become the avoiders, or we're kind of pushing that individual in a weird way. And I'm surprised nobody said it yet, but a few weeks ago, I don't know if anybody watches John Oliver, but he did a nice section on harm reduction. And there was a woman named Louise who runs a harm reduction coalition in North Carolina that said addiction is the opposite of connection. And one of the weird things, I say that to people, and I'm like, what does that mean? But when somebody needs help for addiction, they're being asked to leave their family to go get help. They're being asked to leave their friends. Most times they have to leave their job. They have to leave everything and completely disconnect in order to get help and step into that, which is addiction in and of itself. But the back end of that is how do you reconnect people to those support systems? How do you connect them into a recovery support network, whether it's a meeting? Do you offer a meeting that meets their needs? Do you offer a recovery pathway that meets their needs? And then are they going to be stigmatized or validated or just given any sort of compassion when they go down that? Because stigma is that big barrier. I remember for some time, I can't talk about my previous use experience with my family. That's unacceptable. We have this way that we portray ourselves in this mask we wear, but there's so much underlying. We can never really know, but all we can know is just make ourselves available for people, because you never know when somebody's going to ask for help, and then be prepared to respond to that or to be knowledgeable of the resources to get that individual help.
Yeah, not a whole lot to piggyback off of, but first of all, I'm sorry for the loss. I actually lost someone as well. Actually, just want to bring to the brother. It was a long-term heroin user, so a clean-cut white boy, looked like a back people, as my mom used to say. Actually, he was a functioning heroin user at work, intake at GBMC. So he was shooting heroin in his car and going right into work, checking people into a hospital. So people are very good at hiding these things, and pretty much like everyone else around here. Not everything is going to be across the board. Not every addiction is going to look the same. We are going to see some signs and symptoms. But having those honest and open conversations, having non-accusatory conversations when you're addressing those concerns, coming from a place of concern, saying that I've noticed, not you are doing, using language is extremely important. I feel that I've noticed that those types of
just gonna do like a sort of hot take controversial statement a little bit, but there's no right or wrong way to do any of this stuff. There really is, just like the stigma of addiction and versus substance use disorder, all this stuff. It's like, I'll have a family member call me one day, they did everything by the book, you know what I mean? And their kid went to treatment or did something, right? And I'll have another family call me and they're like, they cussed him out, told him to move, threw stuff in the front lawn, and then they came back an hour later and decided they were gonna go do something different, you know? And it's like, and I think about all the situations I've been in, like I said, like I lost both my parents to addiction, I lost a nephew, I lost a niece, my sister went into treatment Tuesday, another niece just got out of 90-day treatment, you know, like I've done a million things, right? Like, I cussed my sister out on the phone, you know what I mean? Like, me and my brother have gotten into a fist fight when I was using it. It's like, and any number of things led to either a negative or positive thing, you know? And then to speak to the coercion thing that was brought up earlier, like coercion isn't good. I'm a direct product of coercion to go to treatment. I'm the direct product of coercion to go to sober living. I'm the direct product of coercion to go to 12-step meetings. And it worked for me. You know what I mean? Like, with that being said, like, and I went to school for theology because I believe that miracles happen by any possible outlet, right? And so therefore I say, if we're inspired to do something and there's not enough time to ask somebody else what to do, then I think most of the time we better act on what we're inspired to do. And sometimes that's the thing that makes a difference. Because it has been for me, so.
That's, yeah, of course, a really hard question because addiction looks different for everyone. Beyonce had years clean and eventually overdosed. And the amount of denial on my side, like I think about it to this day, I should have said something. It's those little minute details. You feel it in your gut. You know, this isn't right. But for me, I just want to keep denying it. I love this person. I know I've seen them clean and sober and doing it. Like I know this couldn't be the case. No possible way. But I've learned a valuable lesson of who walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, is probably a duck. And it's better to just ask and have open communication rather than wonder, what if I did say something?
So it's 6:45. I think a good ender would be for us to go around, since we're a whole group is now, and then share the resources that you guys offer and the groups that you have at your program.
I'm Earl. I'm just a student. Do you ever want to chat? I'll sit down, be a chat, be a talk, so I'm around here.
He's also my at-home assistant, you know? So I'm with Recovery Centers of America. We're a detox inpatient treatment facility in Maryland. We have 2 facilities in Maryland, 12 nationally. What we're good at is we take the highest amount of methadone that any treatment center will take, which is 200 milligrams, right? We also, if you're in network with us insurance-wise, which we're in network with everything other than United Healthcare, right, and TRICARE. Those are only 2 things we can't take. We will do free interventions, right? So, and if it's a cash pay patient, you'll pay something, but if the intervention doesn't actually happen, the person doesn't get to treatment, you get your money back. You know what I mean? Like, it's never a waste, right? Interventions are stuff that costs like $5 to $15 to even $25,000 per person, you know? So like, if you can get that thing kind of like eliminated from the need, then you're good, right? So other things we do, we can treat pregnant women up to their 3rd trimester. We also have something where insurance sometimes has a high deductible. It's called FinPay, right? We can waive a higher deductible most of the time to the back end over a 0% interest payment plan, right? So those are some things that we can do. Other good things about our programming at RCA is we have a 3-hour-a-week wellness director who's a 50-plus gold medalist bodybuilder in the state of Delaware. He literally would do personal training with people, take them around the track. We have a state-of-the-art gym. All that stuff is built there. We have a 40-hour-a-week paid spiritual advisor who's there to pray with people, meditate with people, do stuff like that. We have a 40-hour-a-week wellness and yoga instructor who does yoga, Reiki, meditation, all those kind of things. Nothing is an ancillary charge at our facility. So when you come in, all those things are available to absolutely everyone. So those are some like the great things about our program. We're on 560 acres. The closest one to here is in Cecil County. We're on 560 acres. And we're just a really beautiful facility. We're on the Sassafras River. You can go fishing on Saturdays, great weather and staff improves. So those are the kind of things we can do where I'm at. We also offer great trauma support. All of our therapists are master's level. And then we're hiring too. So if you wanted to start off doing something like being RSS, recovery support specialist or something like that, a lot of those guys become interns and get jobs there. So let me know.
I'm Chelsea Bridges. I'm with Shepherd Pratt. So we are, well, Shepherd Pratt has over 165 programs, but we have 2 hospitals, one in Towson and one in Elbridge. We offer a full continuum of care, everything from crisis beds, which is inpatient into outpatient services. We have services for children and families 5 up through geriatrics and patients dealing with dementia. So when I say primary mental health, that means we don't treat substance use. We see a lot of co-occurring. We have 2 inpatient co-occurring units, but the primary diagnosis needs to be a mental health diagnosis. We have 2 psychiatric urgent cares, one in Towson, one in Elbridge. And what these do is they provide urgent assessment. So if you have someone that's struggling or in a mental health crisis, what they do is they go and they get an evaluation for a level of care. So the doctor will evaluate them and recommend whether they need to go, inpatient, do a day hospital, do an intensive outpatient, or do outpatient and provide them with the resources for that. So it's a good way to get care if you're struggling. We are in network with we take Medicare, Medicaid, we take private insurance, and then we have our specialty programs, which are self-pay, which include the Center for Eating Disorders, COPES, which is our outpatient evaluation. So if someone has been struggling to get a diagnosis, they can come in. It's a 3-day evaluation. We have the Trauma Disorders program, and we also, I'm new, so I'm still I'm working on this. We also have Retreat, which is an adult program, and Life Launch, which is a self-pay adolescent program for children from 12 to 17 years old who need a residential mental health program. We also have an outpatient MET program that I'm learning more about. So that is a way that you treat substance. It does Suboxone and methadone, and I believe it does Vivitrol. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I can get back to you. But if you have any questions about what Shepherd Pratt offers, my cards are over there, and you can contact me directly.
You're right. I'm Olson Torsch. I am the, I guess I got to introduce myself, but I am the Substance Use Family Care Support Specialist for Maryland Coalition of Families. Essentially, what Maryland Coalition of Families does is, but we are a statewide nonprofit organization that offers free family care support to any caregiver or family member of someone with substance use, mental, behavioral health, gambling, involved in juvenile services, Department of Juvenile Services. Forgive me if I miss some things, because we really do offer a tremendous amount, especially outside of my realm of substance use. To break it down as simply as possible, we work with the families. We recognize that substance use, mental health, these are all family diseases. The family are suffering and are often in recovery along with the individual who is experiencing that. So we work with that. Caregiver is a very broad term now, especially within our organization. It doesn't just have to be a parent. It can be a sibling. It can be a grandparent. It can be an aunt or uncle, someone with kinship. It can even be a roommate, partner. It doesn't matter as long as you are that person's primary caregiver. We said before, if you're in college, don't become your roommate's caregiver. But we can serve. And we're working with those families, and we're working with those individuals. We're providing emotional support. We're helping find resources. We're connecting them to treatment, connecting them to funding options, housing options, food insecurities. No matter what it is that you're looking for, we can essentially help you locate that. And we can just essentially just support you emotionally at that time. We recognize, and probably the best part about our program, not only is it that it's free, is that all of our family support specialists, we have lived experience as caregivers in the realm of working with them. And so I myself, I have a unique perspective being a sibling caregiver. I was a caregiver as a teenager for someone who was a little bit older than me. So I do have a pretty unique perspective on this, and honestly, so does everyone else at our organization. That's why we're so passionate about the work that we do. Outside of the substance use realm, especially on the mental health side, we're attending IEP meetings, we're attending 504 meetings, understanding your rights as a caregiver, understanding your insurance policies, and how to navigate that. We do workshops, we all run our own individual support groups. I run one strictly for caregivers, and it's a pretty, again, pretty broad. We have grandparents, we have parents, we have partners, moms, dads, you name it. And that takes place bi-weekly, it's every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, and it's on Zoom. If you want more information about that, I can give that to you. We are, like I said, completely free. We're available in every jurisdiction in Maryland. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in Ocean City or if you're all the way up in Allegheny County, we can serve you. We offer Spanish-speaking also services as well. And then if you need any additional information, my cards are back there, and I'd be more happy to talk to you about our services.
So I'm Marcus again, last name Webster, no relation to Miriam. Elliot's the one that gave the definition. So Voices of Hope, and I'm going to give just a very brief history. So Voices of Hope started in 2013. It was a group of individuals affiliated with the same recovery group who came together and said, we want to help get our friends into treatment. We're tired of losing people. They started, helping people navigate the tough world of trying to get into treatment, which can be foreign to some people, especially if they lack financial resources to do so. Then it started escalating, and then let's get some Narcan out in our community, the opioid blocking drug, not opioid reversal drug. So they started getting out in the community. They started pioneering a backpack model of outreach where they're putting Narcan, safe sex supplies, various other harm reduction supplies in a backpack, walking into some of the hardest hit neighborhoods in Cecil County and Elkton. And then we recently, this past year, 2020, expanded over in Hartford County. So just to give a quick program overview, so harm reduction is really our bread and butter. It's how we're engaging people that are actively using. It's how we're engaging mothers who drive up next to us when we're in Headwater Village and say, y'all the Narcan people, my son needs to get in treatment, needs some Narcan. It's how we're giving out safe sex supplies to sex worker populations to ensure that they're staying safe and slowing the spread of infectious diseases. It's wound care to make sure that they're treating and cleaning their wounds that they're actively injecting in. It's a wound care nurse who's going out there and meeting with them in their hotel room, in their home, in their 4-car garage, in a shed in the backyard that's saying, hey, can I see your arm? And try to give you some hope that we can save your arm and save your life at the end of the day. And if you haven't had the chance to, make sure you talk to him. He's a really cool guy. And really, and I know this, I said this to some of you guys, we offer an array of services for people that say, I don't have a problem even though I'm injecting heroin into my neck. Or we offer services for people that have been clean for 30 years and need a recovery support group. So it's that harm reduction, it's that treatment navigation and support, it's that peer and family support as they go through that process and get them into that process. It's the recovery support meetings afterwards, and we offer that menu approach to recovery support. If you want to do 12-step, we have 12-step almost every night of the week. If you want to do Sangha meditation as your recovery pathway, we offer that. If you want to do smart recovery, which is a CBT-based recovery model, we offer that. If you want to do terrain theory, where you're going out on hikes and getting in touch with nature while talking about recovery, we offer that. And we also just recently bought 2 recovery houses and folded them into our model, which is to end the cycle of addiction for all. So we offer an array of services across 2 counties. We also have officially become an approved syringe service provider in Norfolk County. If any of you grew up here like I did, it's a huge deal. If any of you grew up like I did, you know that drug use happens here. We know about heroin high down there. We know that the best stuff always came from John Carroll, and we knew the Bel Air kids. The Bel Air kids never had drug dogs in the hallway the way we did our urban 40 schools. But we've got syringe services in Hartford County. It was a huge uphill battle, talking with stakeholders, letting them know that it does work. And it does work. Over the past year, we lowered overdose deaths in Cecil County, which was, I didn't say it, the heroin coordinator said it, by 38%, because we're getting out in the communities, because we're engaging people, because we're handing out Narcan. So we offer a variety of services. Another program we do is our Certified Peer Recovery Specialist Program, which means that, let's say you're on a recovery pathway, you have 2 years under your belt, which is the requirement set by the state. We offer a variety of free trainings to help you become a certified peer in the state of Maryland, which increases your employment opportunities, which gives you the availability to go into hospitals and start alleviate stigma, which gives you the ability to go out and promote and show that recovery does in fact happen, and that individuals are not just addicts, they're not junkies, they're not the people that we step over in the street or see and on the news. They're people, they're mothers, they're fathers, they're people that can go on to do incredible things. So we offer all that and whatever happens you can.
I'm just Jared. I am the supervisor for Cecil County Harm Reduction and person in long-term recovery. I stopped doing drugs, my life got better.
Actually, addiction treatment has been a local inpatient facility since 1985. We're going on 37 years providing services to Harper County. So we have a traditional 28-day inpatient in Havre de Grace, which is, you come in, you do 28 days, you get detox, medically stable. What a day looks like is 3 hot meals, group therapy, individual therapy. We have a gym, we have spiritual advisors, we have a plethora of other peer services that are provided, or trauma group, grief group, stuff like that. 12-step meetings brought into campus 3 times a day. COVID has been a curse and a blessing in that front. We've been able to make things a lot more accessible to families and individuals coming in and getting treatment. We have 2 outpatient services, one in Bel Air, one in Elton. We have our clubhouse, which is our newest venture, which provides peer services for adolescents 12 to 17, either struggling or negatively impacted by substance use. Pretty much a safe space for the kids to go and get education on that front. I'm gonna let Jeff speak a little bit more with like the family stuff that Ashley provides.
Yeah, so we know that addiction doesn't just impact the person who's addicted. Like I said, it impacts the family system. So, like you said, it was a blessing and curse with COVID. We used to provide what we call a family weekend. Now we've been able to expand our services even longer. So we do work with the patients in that they get to do family therapy with their loved one. We Zoom them in, they're able to see them. That allows us to do services with the family no matter whether they're in California, another country, wherever. And that's been really nice. We do coaching for families. We do workshops for families, so we can extend the services 4, 6, 8, a year. I've got some families that have been doing the workshops for the last year and a half, and it really helps to support not only the person that's trying to get long-term recovery, but also the families as well. We talk to them about codependency and enabling. We talk to them about boundaries. We talk to them about healthy communication. We talk about recovery as a family member. It's learning skills to help them to get into a space where they can help their loved one in a healthy way. So we do a lot of that with the families and also with the patients.
So, I'm one of your alcohol counselors, Towson University. So in the counseling center, we have 2 licensed clinical drug counselors, myself and my colleague Emily Wiggin. We provide individual and group counseling for students, whether they're concerned about their own substance use, their friends' substance use, family members, and things like that. So those are all completely free services to students. The counseling center also offers general counseling services. The cool thing with the model that we have is we have same-day appointments for general counseling. So if you're having a rough day, if you're on main campus, you just walk or call in and say, hey, I want to see someone today, and we'll make that happen. The other cool thing, because of COVID, we now offer telehealth sessions. So you're up here, you don't want to drive to main campus because parking's a nightmare, let's be honest. You can call the counseling center and say, hey, I want to set a telehealth session. You can actually book your sessions online now, which is cool too. So you don't have to talk to a human being unless you live with them. Again, all the services, they're free, they're confidential. We also help connect students to resources off campus. We have a care manager on staff, and her sole job is to help connect students off campus. Oh, we connect students off campus, it's not here's a list of referrals, good luck. She's gonna work with you, your therapist on campus is gonna work with you, make sure you're connected the entire time until you're securely connected off campus. So it's not just like some like random list of names, good luck calling them. We're gonna make sure our students are supported until they're fully connected on campus. She'll check insurances, things like that. She's phenomenal, to the point where like if transportation is an issue, she'll find places that are within walking distance to your home or bus routes, things like that.
So we really do support the students holistically at Towson University. Also, if you're on campus and you want to, we have massage chairs. They're free to use. You can use them for 30 minutes at a time. Just give your ID to the person at the front desk. You can use them as much as you want. They sit empty a lot of the day. Our own administrative assistant used to nap with them, but she got a better job. So Allison's way there had like. Oh, you have one here, Jay? Oh shit! Don't.
I think most of us would get it back there, just like there's.
You have a massage chair here at Towson University on campus. Flowers on the back corner. Please enjoy it. I'll hear over Jack talk about some of the things. Oh, we also have a collegiate recovery program. We should talk about that. So we have a collegiate recovery program. So if you're a person who's recovering from substance use disorder, talk to me. We have an entire program to support you. The way it looks like is we have a drop-in space that students can use. It's only available 2 hours a week right now, but we're working on commandeering another space on campus, which is quite nice. We're squatting. We help students navigate college because college is really difficult, and we're a large university. So if you're having difficulty with classes, things like that, in person, I can also help you get accommodations through the Accessibility and Disability Support Services Office. People in recovery are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. A lot of people don't realize that, and that affords you reasonable accommodations to help you pursue your education. We can help make that happen for students as well. We also have a separate graduation for students who are in recovery. Yes, you still do the big one. Our students that graduate get their own special point for Tigers in Recovery. It's the name of the program. You also get honor reports that you get wherever you walk across that stage. Because it's amazing that people graduate college, but in my opinion, it's even more amazing when you do a well-maintained your recovery. Because that's not an easy feat. Our graduation family members are encouraged to come. People support our encouraged companies, so we're celebrating the accomplishment of that student. We also connect with other collegiate recovery programs across the state because it is a state law that every university has to support students in recovery. So we'll make sure that we can make these larger groups as a state as well. No.
Very nice job. Just a couple other things to add. We have tiered level of care, so what that means is we also offer a lot of self-help resources to students. We offer that on our website, and then also if you come in for sessions and maybe you don't want to go to therapy, you're just there to get some help. We offer a lot of opportunities to find resources on your own or use the services we offer. So we have lots of things we've designed that we have built into our social media or on our website to help students help themselves. We also have lots and lots of workshop programs. So workshops that are led by our peer educators, I'll talk about that in a second, and then workshops that are led by a variety of staff on our team on a variety of different topic areas. Look at our website. We also offer peer education. So we have right now 2 peer education programs in the counseling center, 2 in the health center, which we're in the same building, so 1 floor and another floor. I run the one for alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. We have one for mental health and diversity, and then we have one for sexual health education and sexual assault prevention. We work all over campus. We collaborate all of the time. Our peer educators, it's my favorite part of my job. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. If I could just do that all day, that is what I would do. But I have a long list of other things I have to get paid to do. So peer education is a great opportunity. If you are a student here too, you are also welcome to be a part of our peer education program, or if you have friends that are passionate about wellness, prevention, harm reduction, education, fill in the blank. Join peer education. It's a phenomenal leadership opportunity, a great thing to throw on your resume as well. We also have a meditation room that can be reserved for a variety of periods of time. We have a meditation group that you could join if you want to meditate with other people. I feel like I'm missing something, but I guess that's it. We have a really robust social media platform too, ATOD as well as the Counseling Center. So if you go on our website, you can find links to that. We have tons of resources right on our social media for students as well. So check that out. It's great videos to send students for quick tips and tricks on managing general life stuff. So, yeah.
Hey, we're the health department. We do what we can. No. We're down in the clinical office in Edgewood. We've got a lot of stuff there. WIC, family planning. We're right next to Community Action Agency. What else do we have? Yeah, those are the other programs. I'll talk about ours. We're the harm reduction unit. Our goal is to meet people where they're at and walk with them there. We've already heard a lot of wonderfully put things about harm reduction by Marcus, so I won't say too much more. We do evidence-based practices. If somebody wants to come in and they're interested in outpatient or inpatient treatment, we'll connect you to the right person if somebody wants to come in. And then we're going to continue doing inject drugs. I want to talk about ways to reduce their chance of contracting Hep C. We'll talk about that. Speaking of Hep C, we do HIV Hep C rapid testing in the community. And I feel like an announcer there. I'm good. and we'll lead you to care, retreat, Pepsi, where we're at. We can also help you get on PrEP if you're interested in that. PrEP is a pill you take once a day and reduces your chance of contracting HIV 99.9% through intercourse and about 70% through injection drug use. What else do we do? We also do trainings. We'll come out of training naloxone, STI trainings. We have an over-amping training. That's always one that we should talk about more. We talk a lot about opioid overdose, but not a lot about stimulant overdose or over-amping.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. You said naloxone as well, obviously, like that's something we do. And I would just add that whether you know it or not, you guys are already paying us, so I would use our resources for sure.
All right, so we're a little after 7, so I just want to take the time to thank you all again for coming. An even bigger thank you for you guys for coming, sharing resources, and for sharing your stories. It means a lot. Thank you. Again, panelists have their contact information and longer bios. I did put QR codes on everybody's tables, including yours, if you guys can fill out the evaluation for me. And make sure you guys sign in. Allison has a form because we have raffles for students and for members, so please sign in. Thank you.